Hello everyone, this is Hawk, back again with more sound design.
Do you like audio?
Wow, as it happens, I do too. Not long ago, I did a full audio redesign for a clip I got from the video game MegaSphere. Now, if you haven't seen that redesign, I highly recommend going to watch it here. Now, I thought this game had some very interesting visuals, and today I will be breaking down all of my design choices for my audio redesign so you can see how a professional sound designer and an audio engineer work through the audio for video games and film. Before you watch the rest of this video, I highly recommend you go watch this redesign so you can see what we're working with. Now, if you're a filmmaker or an indie game developer, I really hope you find this video useful as well, because this is the kind of stuff that your audio people will be doing every day. And without further ado, let's get into it. Now, when we look at doing audio for any project, there are always five audio categories that we need to finalize. Those being dialogue, music, sound effects, Foley, and backgrounds, or BGs. Personally, I like to start with the BGs. Now, for those who don't know, BG stands for backgrounds, or you can also call them ambiances. And just like how the background of a video might tell you where it is set and the physical location, the background of the audio further reinforces this by making it sound like how it looks. Essentially, you are further enhancing the space with descriptive audio. Now, for our clip, we are working with a very large space. It's set in a sci-fi spaceship, and we see a lot of emptiness around it. We also see lots of sci-fi tech, lots of lights, and overall this means our BG will need to reflect those elements. Now, you can see here we have sort of just like a basic mono wind, just adding a little bit of airiness to the space. We also have a sort of sci-fi background for an empty sort of ambient spaceship. And we also just have like a space wind. Now, these are all mono ambiances so far, which means we're going to hear them pretty much normally across the entire space. And this is very important because it sort of adds a standard bass to the ambience. We also have some stereo BGs down here. We have an alien spaceship again. We have sort of like a tonal one to add a little bit of that electrical hum. And we also have a reactor, which is very interesting. And I also made a custom BG layer just for this to add just a little bit of character on top. Now, individually, these BGs don't really sound like much, but when you add them all together, you get something quite interesting that's starting to sound more like our space. Let's give it a listen. And of course, we can further enhance this with a little bit of reverb and delay to really tune in the space of the ambience. And that gives us our final product. Now, these are naturally supposed to be very quiet, so what you're hearing here is actually a much louder version for the purposes of this video. But you can see how this reflects the space of our scene. Now, if I were editing this to a video game, this is something we would call a 2D ambience. But since we are editing this to a film clip, this is just going to be what we call a standard BG bed. Now let's explore the sound effects, which is of course going to be the biggest part by far. In this clip, we have quite a lot to do. First, we have this big airlock mechanism that seems to be descending, and it has these separating sections that come apart as it's going down. Then it lands on the floor with all these lights and smaller mechanisms activating before finally the door opens, our character comes out, and then the door closes. We also have a few more smaller ambient things and a UI happening in the background. Let's go through it linearly and start with the airlock. I wanted this to sound synthetic, resembling a kind of sci-fi motor and engine powering it as it descends. This led me to incorporating a few different layers from a crane, a motor, some air hissing, and of course a custom synth layer I decided to add manually. Now, just on its own, that gives us this. However, we can further enhance this with just a little bit of pitch shifting and distortion. Next, we have all of these separating sections, and this gave me a little trouble, but was a lot of fun. They look very heavy and mechanical to me, and given the scale of the setting, I felt that these should have these very large, chunky mechanical sounds. I incorporated a lot of mech samples into this, and eventually I ended up with this. However, this still wasn't quite enough. The mech sounds were giving it nice mechanical layers, and there was a nice bassy hit to it, but it just wasn't quite what I was looking for. So after some revisions, I ended up just adding in more mechanical layers before the main hit to give it the sound of the airlock actually unlatching and expanding more. And after some extra processing, I really got that ka-chunk, ka-chunk that I was looking for. Now we have the airlock done, but we still have the main door with all of its little actions and mechanisms. We want this to sound a little bit smaller, but match the overall vibe of the scene and the already existing sounds that we have in place. It's very important to match so that everything meshes together. Now, since we are going for an overall heavy and mechanical sound design theme at this point, I added a variety of servos and hydraulics. This matches the visuals of these smaller actions with these locks turning and the door opening afterwards. Now we can see here, I actually experimented with a synth layer, but it really didn't work out at the end, so I ended up removing it. Now it's important to note that not every design choice you make will fit the scene, so don't be afraid to remove things if you have to. I also added in several scraping sounds and some extra layers for character. Now after all that was done, we ended up with something very interesting.
Nice.
Very cool. And let's not forget to add in all those lights that we saw happening throughout the clip. This will really help drive the design home and add in a lot of shiny detail. Now we have a few places in this video where the sequences of lights stands out. We have when the airlock lands, where the lights come on and change color, and when these two larger lights change right before the door opens. The sequence of lights made me think that the machine was testing the atmosphere, making sure that the airlock was attached properly before opening the door to ensure that everything was safe. So I wanted to make this sound really synthetic and give that last section with the lights a little bit more of a positive sound to show that the lock was successful. For these, you can see I combined a lot of things, including some custom synth patches. I also included a variety of real-world samples of neon lights, sparks, and variety of sort of like electrical action sounds, I like to call them. And with all that put together, we get this as our final result. And of course, we can't forget the end where the lights turn back from blue to red. And for that, we can actually save a little bit of work by just exporting what we did previously and modifying it slightly. Now with this, we're almost done. Remember those ambient effects I mentioned way back? Well, we have a few of them. We have the lights that spark randomly on the side as the airlock is descending and throughout the rest of the scene. We have this bundle of light cables in the bottom left that turn on at one point. And we also have this steam coming out from almost everywhere on the machine as well. Now, if we were designing these for video game, these would be what we call 3D ambiances. These are small custom sounds that play localized in your level depending on what's going on. And these of course help build the overall setting even more, add to your immersion. However, since we are editing all this to a video clip from the game, these will actually be part of our effects and get mixed in as effects. Overall, these are really easy to add in and really do add a lot of depth to your scene. And now we come to the final part of the sound effects section of this redesign, and that would be the UI. Now, UI sounds in a game are extremely important. They build immersion and also enhance the overall UI experience by telling the player certain things. In this clip, we have the main UI popping up to tell us our mission, as well as a more diegetic UI built into the level itself, which shows us our basic movement commands. For the movement commands, we can actually see that they come up with this light effect, reminiscent of a laser printer in some sci-fi genres, or just something electric in general. I wanted to complement this with some more electric sounds, which gave us this, which, if you can believe, is actually done mainly with tape sounds. Add in a phaser and some extra automation, and we add in a bit more of that sci-fi detail we were looking for. Now, the main UI effect is also very light-based. There are these flashes of light and these moving parts that almost make it seem holographic. For these, let's add in some custom synth effects for that flashing of the lights and the faster activity of the UI. And some basic movement sounds for the rest of the action. Layer it all together and you get something very cohesive. Now that finishes us out for our sound effects, but there's also still one category of sounds we have to look at, and that would be Foley. Foley consists mainly of movement and prop sounds, as in footsteps and, as an example, setting a cup of water down on a counter. In this case, we only have a few footsteps and no props, so we can cut these in very quickly. And that is it. We now have all of our components together. Now we just have to mix them a little bit, add in some spatial effects such as reverb and delay to really lock in that setting again, and we end up with something truly spectacular. And that is how you do audio redesign for a sci-fi video game clip. Thank you all so much for watching my breakdown of how I did this. This project was super fun and I hope you all appreciate it. I plan on doing a lot more of these in the future. Are you a game developer or a filmmaker? Do you want your audio to sound spectacular and amazing? Well, you can reach out to me on any of my social platforms linked below and we can talk about your project. You can also watch more of my sound design videos here. Thank you so much for watching.